Hello and welcome to this channel. Today we're going to be talking about 2020 TRS 300RR, the Adam Raga replica. This is going to be my 30-hour review on this bike, and I gotta tell you one thing, everybody, this is one amazing machine. However, just like any bike you're gonna buy in today's market, you're gonna have things that you hate about it, you're gonna have things that you love about it. I'd like to share my few things that I love about it, and of course, it won't go without the things that I absolutely can't stand about this bike. However, everything outweighs the bad. All the good is outweighing the bad, and it makes me enjoy this bike every time I ride it. Let's look at a few things that I love about the TRS. 30 hours is a decent amount of time to spend on the bike to understand what the bike does and how it feels. So if we're gonna look at the geometry, and I have ridden many different brands, the TRS falls at the middle of the road range on the geometry. You have one extreme of betas, they're very stubby, but they turn very sharp. And then you have another side of the spectrum, which would be the vertigo. When I rode the vertigo, it felt like a bus. It was extremely stable, but if you had a narrow turn you had to get around, it felt like the bike was struggling. So the TRS falls right in the middle of the road. It still turns fairly sharp, yet it's stable. This bike is plentiful in stability. Matter of fact, when you're just static balancing on the TRS, you feel relaxed. The bike is not fighting you, it just wants to balance. Same goes for when you're riding, you come to a stop, it's very effortless. Let's talk about the engine. What a great motor this is. The engine is very predictable and smooth power band. Very powerful, not a powerhouse like the Vertigo or the Scorpa/Sherco, but there's still no lack of power. It really comes down to a different type of power delivery and how the power band works. The TRS is very good at putting down the traction on the ground. Any kind of condition, you can get that traction. Let's talk about the bike build quality. You know what? It's very high-end build quality. Everything looks clean. Everything looks well done. They're using top-notch components. Obviously, this is the factory replica version, so they're gonna go for high-end forks. They're gonna go for rigor shock. You got brake tech brakes. A lot of those components are shared amongst other brands at the factory models. But there goes something to say about the true TRS components that are only on that bike. They are absolutely beautiful. And the craftsmanship, you can tell the guys have done a really good job engineering, designing, and putting the bike together. Let's talk about how clean the bike runs. It has the Kian PWK 28mm carb, which is shared across the board with other bikes. However, I have noticed that on my Scorpa, every time the weather changes or the elevation changes, there's a lot of adjustment in the air screw mixture. Every time I went riding, it's either half a turn back, half a turn forward, just to get the bike to run cleaner. The TRS, I haven't touched it. It is amazing. I don't know what it is. The carbs are the same, but the bike runs different. If anybody has an answer to that, that would be great. What I want to do in the future is take apart the two carbs and just make sure that there is no internal differences between the two brands. Let's talk about accessibility of components while doing maintenance on your TRS. It is absolutely amazing that somebody has thought through, not just from the engineering point of view, but also from a mechanical point of view, on how a person would reach in to get through the components so they can do maintenance on the bike. Everything is easily accessible. Everything has been designed in order to make your life easier to get to the components, to change the shock or the rear spring, to do the maintenance on the rear linkage, to take off the airbox, to do the filter. It's right there. You're not swearing and fighting anything. All the tools, basic tools that you would have in your toolbox, they would work. You don't need specialty tools to get in there. The air filter compartment is free of obstructions. It's really easy to get in there. Take the filter out. You can reach in with your hand inside of the air filter box to clean out all the grime and all the dirt that builds up over time. However, I do hate that metal clip that sits over the air filter. It doesn't feel like it holds the air filter down very well. And with just a little bit of a bump, the metal bracket that holds the filter down in its pocket, it pops out. So you have to be very careful so you don't accidentally bump the bracket out of the way and all of a sudden you're riding with the filter that's not sealed properly. And of course, the gold. The 2022 and 23 TRS Gold. They are beautiful bikes. You have the 3-way hydro stop shock. You have a choice of electric start. How cool is that? And this is the only brand that stayed true to their hydro stop rear shock advertising, unlike other brands that have put it in the brochures but didn't have it on the bike. No hydro stop as advertised. Now let's move on to the list of things I hate about my TRS. If you have ridden other brands, Beta, Vertigo, Scorpa Sherco, Gas, Ossa, you will notice that those bikes are smooth. The motor idles smooth. There is no vibration. That's not what you get with the TRS. This bike shakes. It vibrates. You can feel it through the handlebars. That was the first thing I noticed when I jumped on the TRS. Does it make a difference when you're riding? I would say yeah. If you have issues with having arm pump or you have bad circulation in your arms, you have just added another element of fatigue to fight against on long rides, especially during the wet conditions when you're trying to hold on to the bike with extra grip and wet gloves. Let's talk about the clutch. Well, if I wanted to play with the light switch, I would just go and buy one at the hardware store and use it as a fidget spinner and put it in my riding pack. What do I mean? What the heck? The TRS clutch. It's like a light switch. It's on or off. I have ridden a lot of other bikes and you go from very smooth delayed clutch response to the TRS, which is on or off. And by far the best clutch I have ever felt is on the Sherco / Scorpa. It's not a lazy clutch by any means, but it has a bigger range of disengagement and engagement when you're riding. So when you need to do the extra feathering just to gain that little bit of grip, it helps. I've had moments on the TRS where you go in, you press the clutch about, I don't know, a 1/16 of an inch or a little less, and all of a sudden the whole motor disengages. You've got no power. Let's talk about steering stops. This bike is beautiful. Beautiful paint, anodized components. Have you seen how the steering stop works on it? Well, the bottom fork clamp bashes against the frame. And TRS didn't do anything to add some sort of a stopper in that area. So what we have been doing is taking old tire tubes, just cutting out the strips, zap strapping those strips around the bottom tree or the bottom clamp, This way, when you're going into a full steering lock, you're not bashing aluminum on aluminum. Come on, TRS, this is something very important. Why don't you make it good from the factory? Same goes for wires at the head tube on the left hand side of the frame. This is a nuisance. You've got wires that are rubbing on the paint. Beautiful, beautiful paint on the bike. Could you not think of a better way to route them so they're not in the way? I'd like to see those improvements almost right away on the bikes. That's two things that are easy to do before you start making more 23s or even go into 2024 models. The last thing that it's not a matter of hating it, it's very easy to fix, but it's a water pump issue, and TRSs are prone to have a water pump issue from the very first set of bikes, and it's still happening. It's 2022 and I still see bikes that are having this issue. And it's not necessarily that the bikes that are older had issues and new bikes don't have issues. No, some older bikes never had a leak, and some new bikes are developing a leak. And guess what? My bike was the one that developed the leak, and it was a slow leak. It's something you don't notice when you're riding, but what you do notice is that your fan starts kicking on more often and more often, even when you're riding in the cold. So I dug into the water pump issue, and I wanted to understand why it's doing that. When I removed the pump and I took out the old seal, I could see a little bit of wear on the water pump shaft. So after doing further research and realizing that on the water side, TRS uses a Viton lip seal, which is rated for upwards of 200 Celsius. So that means the shaft seal or the lip seal is a harder material versus nitrile, NBR. These engines will never reach 200 Celsius. Why are you using such a hard shaft seal on that end? And what made a difference is that the shaft, if it's not hardened and you have a hard seal running in there, you got 30 hours, 40 hours or more, you're just wearing down the shaft and you're creating a gap where the coolant will start seeping through. So to remedy that issue, some people put spacers behind the impeller, which is, you got to put an extra gasket on your housing plate to offset the spacers in the impeller. I don't think it's really the solution. What I've done is I've put a regular nitrile seal, shaft seal, on the water side. The shaft was slightly worn. We're talking about a few microns. There wasn't an issue with the new seal. I was kind of thinking that it was gonna leak, but after I put everything together, it stayed clear, no leak. So I think TRS should really look into that. Either check the hardness of your water pump shafts, make sure that they are up to snuff to stand up to the wear and tear of the harder Viton gasket, or keep your shafts the way they are and just put nitrile gaskets on there, and that should solve your problem. Pass that through your engineering department. I think it'll work. Overall, what a great machine. Every trials bike out there right now is at par. All brands will have their positives and their negatives. The TRS provides great balance and traction. I'm really looking forward to the brands listening out for consumer reports and providing us with changes to their bikes. Thanks for watching my channel. Click that subscribe button below for more content. We're gonna do way more gear reviews, bike reviews. This is non-biased. I'm gonna ride those things. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about the things that are good and bad about the bikes. Thanks for tuning in. See you on the next one.